So again, here we are exploring who you and I are as consciousness. Now, my background is psychology and psychotherapy, but I've been interested in the implications that quantum physics has been providing in recent years, particularly interviews I've watched regarding comments by John Hagelin. But before I go into that, I want to mention a favorite quotation of mine that goes back to Max Planck, who was really the originator of quantum theory. And quantum physics, remember, is that really below this macro level of computers and desks and people into the subatomic, the atomic, the subatomic, the nuclear, the unseen world where physicists do these really tiny experiments that with electrons and so forth. And anyway, Max Planck, upon accepting the Nobel Prize for Physics almost a little over a century ago, had this to say, and it went something like this. As a man who has devoted his whole life to the most clear-headed science, the study of matter, I can say this much as a result of my research on the atom about matter. There is no matter as such. All matter exists by virtue of a force that brings the particles of the atom to vibration and holds this minute solar system together. We must assume behind this force the presence of a conscious, intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of matter. Think about that. So for each of us, our mind, that lens for the light of consciousness, is the matrix of what materializes in our world. Now, in terms of matter, let's take a look at that and the implications. Eckhart Tolle has talked about this, Deepak Chopra. In fact, Deepak has said something like that what we see as solid objects and so forth are really, at the subatomic level, there's more space than there is what we would think of as substance. So, for example, as I sit here where I'm located in Pennsylvania, and 20 miles away is Springfield, and I'm in media, that if this were the nucleus, if this were an atom, the first electron could be in Springfield. That's how much space. It's sort of like the space between these so-called particles is vast, and that's for inner space. And so it was said that 99.99% of what we think of as solid matter is empty space. And the same holds for outer space, that so many of the objects we see clustered together in the night sky are like light years apart from it, many, many light years apart from each other. Vast numbers. So the idea of space for our purposes, for my purposes, from a psychological standpoint and from a therapeutic standpoint, from a standpoint of reducing our stress, is to find that spaciousness within ourselves that is consciousness, that witnessing presence, that which Eckhart has sort of suggested when he talked about Christ's comment, the kingdom of heaven is within you. And the kingdom of heaven's a good image of like the sky. You can look at the sky, the vast spaciousness of the sky. And in the ancient teachings, as we've been talking about from the Buddhist and the Hindu perspective and so forth, that imagery of the sky that remains unaffected by storms and so forth is like the vast inner space within us. You know, that there's a space between the impulse and the action. and we want to be able to access and create our lives and choose what we're going to say and do rather than just be reactive, knee-jerk reactions. So what we're finding now, science, is studying quite vigorously in these consciousness studies in universities, and there's conventions on conscious for the last at least 20 years. And the thing that is very crucial that somewhat gets missed is science generally has a materialism, a scientific materialism basis. And that means that matter is primary and everything else is secondary, so that our bodies are created, then the nervous system, the brain, and then there's something of a mind and a spark, what you call consciousness. But when you look at your experience every day when you wake up, when you open your eyes, the world virtually comes into existence for you. And when you go to sleep at night and you close your eyes and you're asleep, virtually the world subjectively has disappeared. And all that's present is still the mind is operating, but the body has disappeared. You're not aware of lying in bed. So the body and the world, the three areas of experience, mind, body, and world. Mind is there, but body and world are gone. And then in deep sleep, mind's gone, so it's just awareness alone. There's no mind, there's no body, there's no world in our experience. So that every morning you wake up, it's as if the world comes into view, and all these things are appearances in you, the awareness. And that includes your body as an object to you in awareness, your mind, your thoughts, inner and outer objects. And so when you withdraw your attention from the mind, the body, and the world, you can sink into that deep inner spaciousness that's mirrored in physics by the vast space within the subatomic particles. And as Max Planck is talking about, there's a vast intelligence. So that matter as it appears, it's not what it seems to be. And so as John Hagelin has put it very beautifully, interestingly, he says that basically the tighter that physics has tried to grasp onto the fundamental building blocks of reality, of physical reality, the tighter the grasp to get at what is the basis of it all, at that basis, the fundamental basis that Max Planck found, the Planck scale, that the universe, reality, slips through our fingers. Because at that level, as we get deeper and deeper into that quantum level, to that unseen level, what we find is more space. We find that there's a non-material, dynamic, self-aware intelligence. And think about it. As you sit here watching this video, your heart's beating and your mind's not saying, don't forget to make your heart beat, and your food's digesting, your respiration's taking place, your liver's functioning, your kidneys functioning, your muscles are reaping the benefits of the food you ate this morning, and so forth. So that there's a lot happening. Your fingernails are growing, your hair is growing, cells are dividing. All this is operating by a very vast intelligence, of which our mind is just a small aspect, like a lens that we can then focus that intelligence, like a magnifying glass focusing the sunlight on something we want to, like I mentioned before, burning a hole in a leaf, or for those kids who are more sadistic, doing that to ants. Okay. So this idea then that matter, that we think this desk as I hit it, this is solid, this is real. I bumped my knee on it, it hurts. But what is it in here that's telling me this is real? It's basically invisible, and no neurosurgeon has been able to cut into anybody's brain and find consciousness. And those people with the near-death experiences, like even Alexander, and again, I've given you links to his talks on YouTube. A Harvard-trained medical doctor, neurosurgeon, and he went through a near-death experience that came out for him. The conclusion was there is no way that we can prove or find any way that a piece of matter, the brain, can produce a first-person knowing experience, this inner life, this rich inner life with all the thoughts and the symbols that we come up with through art, and all this vastness of creativity can be reduced to some biochemicals in the brain. And so, as John Hagelin has said, think about it this week, think about it. At the basis of it all, the universe, this seemingly solid world, slips through our fingers. That it's really non-material, it's really dynamic, it's really self-aware intelligence. And that, you can take a breath every once in a while through the day and just rest in that awareness that you, as awareness, that consciousness is always there. And it's the light of the world. You and I, as this consciousness, this awareness, are the light of the world. Now, one other thing I wanted to mention in this regard, that there was a psychologist, and his whole name is very long. It's Hawaiian. I'm just going to mention the first part of his name, Hagelin, we'll call him. Now, Hagelin was a psychologist who was called upon to deal with this. There was a unit in a hospital in Hawaii for the criminally insane. You know, the Hannibal Lecters, the psychopaths. And he said he would consult, but he wouldn't go on site. He'd go a few miles away, as I understand it. These are the gist of it. And he would sit with the charts of these patients. And he sat with each chart, and I don't know the length of time he did, I'm not sure, but the essence of it was he would sit with the chart and taking full responsibility for our own reality, our own experience. He said he would do this. He would say deeply within himself, that feeling that as he's witnessing this, he says, I'm sorry, I love you. Now, as he did this with each of the charts in this very genuine, deeply centered way, eventually the patients got better. And he never saw them. He only did what this process called Ho'oponopono. And the usual way it's broken down is, I'm sorry, I love you, please forgive me. And it's been presented in different ways. But he would say, we have to take responsibility for whatever comes into our experience. And these charts came into his experience, so he took responsibility. And I imagine him empathetically imagining what the child that this criminal was, each of these criminals, and feeling that for them, and really genuinely saying he was sorry and asking for forgiveness. And this ended up emptying out the whole unit eventually. I don't know the timeline, but the whole atmosphere of the unit changed. So here it was, just on a consciousness level, that nobody had a physical interaction with Hagelin, and yet this happened. And then another example, Joe Vitale was interviewing Hagelin. Joe Vitale wrote the book, The Attractor Factor, about how the law of attraction, you know, what you think and what you focus on, focus intent will bring things to you. So the essence of the law of attraction is that which you give thought to, you begin to attract into your experience. That which you give thought to with strong emotion, you begin to attract more clearly, more quickly. And that which you give thought to with strong emotion and begin to expect, allow, expect and allow, will come more quickly. So that which I give thought to, I begin to attract. That which I give thought to with strong emotion, I attract more quickly. And that which I give thought to with strong emotion, believe, expect, and allow, I will receive. So he's talking to Hagelin, and he said, Hagelin says to him, now as you improve, as you grow, and as you expand and become more aware yourself, he says this to Joe, your books will improve. Your books will improve. And so he says, Joe says to Hagelin, well, what about the books that are already out there? And this is the punchline. And Hagelin said, there is no out there. And as we've been talking, all that you experience is taking place in the spaciousness of your awareness. What you experience, what I experience, is appearing in this space awareness. My image on your computer screen, the trees outside, your home, the paintings on your wall, the furniture in your room, all are appearances in you, the awareness, in me, the awareness. And so he said, so there's no out there. And so that those books that are out there, seemingly, in this space awareness, that as he improves, those books that have been already read, he was suggesting those people would also improve too. Very radical compared to our usual way of thinking about this. So this week, consider the vastness of outer space, the vast light years that are between the stars we see in the sky and between us and those stars, so that in any given night, as I remember something recently, that the light that we might be seeing from certain stars, we're seeing the light that may have been there in the time of ancient Rome. That's what's finally reaching here. That's how many light years that is from us. So, and consider the vast space within your own physical body, within the cells, within the atoms. And think about what Max Planck has said. All matter originates and exists by virtue of a force that gives vibration brings the particles of the atoms to vibration and holds this little minute solar system together. And we must assume behind that force the presence of a conscious intelligence. And that intelligence is the matrix of matter. And you, with your mind as the lens that it is for the light of consciousness that you are, is that lens that gives material, that is a conscious, more focused intelligence behind what materializes in your life, what matter appears in your life, what matters. So with that, there's some food for thought for your week. Have a great week, and I'll see you next week.